Good morning, Ian Spanier.
Morning.
How are you today?
I'm doing all right. You?
I was a little bit nervous, and it's so funny because I've worked with you so many times over the past several years, but I've never spoken with you in this capacity. And I'm nervous because I care and I know how well spoken you are, and I know how many podcasts and interviews you've done, but I don't know if you've ever done one like this before. I do love your lighting techniques. I do adore your photography and videography skills and your editing skills. But I want to know more about you and what makes your soul sing and what makes your heart tick and what makes your brain, excited.
Well, are you putting pressure on me now? Like,
No, never
podcast
any
roll.
pressure. Never
I'm just
any
kidding.
pressure.
Unfortunately, I don't have much of the fear switch, so
Oh,
usually these
good.
things don't bother me too much.
You
Yeah.
know what? You just challenged me then. This is fabulous. I will share that you are the first photographer that I've ever shot with where I was wearing a see-through tank top, meaning there's no bra underneath or anything like that. And for me, that's a big deal. I need to really trust an individual. I need to trust someone in order to do that. And so that says a lot about our relationship. There is trust there. And I think that the last set of images we created are my personal favorites because you pushed me. You pushed me outside of my comfort zone. And I want to explore that a little because I bet there are a lot of photographers, a lot of directors out there, a lot of people in general in the art world who want to know how you're able to achieve that. How do you build relationships? Can you get it instantly or will it take years?
Well, I hope it doesn't take years because a lot of the times with my assignments, I'm essentially given sometimes 30 seconds to figure that part out. I have always talked about the aspect of the marriage of photography and psychology as something that's super important to the way, certainly that I function, but I think most photographers function. And I had the good fortune of being mentored by a genius in the psychological aspect, a guy called Harry Benson, who's the photographer that came to America with the Beatles. He's the man behind the very famous image of the Beatles having a pillow fight, but that's just like scratching the surface. This, guy has photographed everyone from President Eisenhower all the way up to President Trump. He's still alive. He's in his 90s, I think, at this point, but he's essentially the Where's Waldo of history. So many of the stories that he shared with me over the years came down to whether he was aware of it or not. It's probably a bit more innate to him than anything else, but his ability to get people to do the thing that maybe they didn't want to do or didn't realize would be the thing that makes for the great photograph. Bits and pieces of everything we talked about over those years probably sits in my brain somewhere. And then I had to do it my way, which is always, the thing that a mentee will do. They hear the mentor and then they figure out, how do I, bring this into the way that I operate? He's very different from me.
Hmm.
I think the Scottish accent and his charisma allowed him to get away with a lot more than I could get away with ever. He dresses a lot nicer than I do as well, which is definitely something. But I think in general, my job as the photographer is to make my subject comfortable so that I can essentially capture something real. And that's always the difficult aspect as a portrait photographer, to get somebody to relax, especially nowadays where the bringing of a camera up to a face immediately brings the shoulders up for most people, even a seasoned actress and model like yourself. So it's one of those things where, yeah, I had to build trust with you, but I can certainly say that over the time that we have worked together, that has been a progressive thing. I know that I pushed you on the previous project that we did, where it was something that you had never done before in terms of playing a part for a still photograph. You've played many parts, obviously, for moving images, but I think I had something so specific in mind, and I basically was plopping you into a scenario and saying, you're going to play this part for me. And you went with it, which was great. And we both learned that we both suck at fashion decisions.
No, no, you don't. You're really good at saying that works, that doesn't work. You're really good
I
at
will.
that.
I'll agree with you there. I think I've always told stylist as well. I'm not going to tell you what clothes to go buy, but I can tell you what looks good and what doesn't. And that's as far as I'll take it. The rest is what you see.
Yeah.
To answer your question, it's not something that takes years. It's not something that takes months. It's something that has to happen very quickly. And I think you would have never gotten to the last shoot or even the previous shoot if we hadn't started off in the right way, which I think we did, which is the very first shoot we did. You knew I'm a normal guy. I'm not, something that you can't find some trust in. And then from there, for you, it was more of a personal question to you. What makes you trust somebody? But I can certainly tell you in the situations when I'm in an assignment scenario, which is most of my work, that I've got a very short period of time to make my subjects trust me and feel comfortable with whatever I'm doing.
Yeah, we had the luxury of having more time to get to know each other while we were on set and while we were shooting. And you came as a recommendation from one of my agents. And so I already gave you trust. And I could tell based on your setup and based on your knowledge that you are a pro, and that increased the trust more. You're also very friendly and easygoing, and I think that that helps a lot as well. So that increased the trust more. There was never any pressure for me to be anything that I'm not. You challenged me in just the right way. And so in that, I think you're very intuitive. You can pick up easily on what your subject needs. And I bet you have to speak a lot of different languages, so to speak, when you're working with different actors or different models, because everybody is different in that way. And for me, I think it was just right. I also think that where I'm at in my life right now, in a way, I was saying, Ian, I want to go a little further. I want to push the boundaries. I want people to stop thinking that I'm just this healthy lifestyle girl, fitness person. I'm also sexy. I'm also very proud of my femininity and strong at the same time. And you heard me and you took that and you went with it and you encouraged me in just the right way. And I honestly feel like these are some of the images that I'm the most proud of. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I'm curious about the folks where you only have 30 seconds. How does that work? What does that even look like? And I'm looking at your images all the time, and you've shot some of the most famous people in the world. And one of my favorite images of yours is of Steven Tyler. And I'm just wondering how, number one, how do you get that opportunity? And number two, how do you capture moments with 30 seconds?
Well, perseverance, I think, is definitely a big part of any aspect of being a photographer that wants to make it somewhere. Big part of my personality is I'm never satisfied. So even with the names you can drop about who I've photographed and whatnot, I still am not where I want to be. I still would like to go further. So never being complacent in a way with where I'm at is something that drives me. And I think I always tell people, I'm a hustler in the sense that I'm not a street hustler, but at the same time, I don't think someone's going to out hustle me. And I sort of view photography in that way. I'm happy to share. I'm a very open book, and I'm happy to tell people exactly how I light things because I'm not worried about them doing the same thing I do because it won't be the same. They're never going to push the button exactly when I'm going to push it. They're never going to compose it exactly as I compose it, even if they do the exact same lighting. And I'm happy to tell them how to exactly do that lighting. So that part is that. And then in terms of the 30 seconds, I sort of found myself built for that. I worked for many years in still life, which I found boring because you don't interact with still life so much. That was where I would blame the understanding of light. And I developed my lighting from doing still life and applied it to people, but people move and people change. So that created its own set of skills as well. And when I developed the time to start doing portraits and eventually got to the place of doing portraits, then it was more about learning how to interact with people and how to do it quickly in the cases that I would not have a lot of time. Now, at first, I had all the time in the world. There wasn't a time limit. But as I started to get into the celebrity world, I saw that time is a limited thing. And then even more so, I was on staff at a media company in New York for a few years where there was 3 business magazines in their portfolio, and those business guys give you 30 seconds. Like, the time literally is money. So they're not going to give you that attention the way that you can somewhat get out of celebrities, because celebrities understand this is a value to them as well. Now, of course, like everybody, they have days they don't want to do it or show up to the assignment and they don't want to be there. And that's a whole nother thing. But with the training I got from working with business men and women, I learned that if I'm told I have 2 minutes, I plan for 30 seconds. If I'm told I have an hour, I plan for 2 minutes. Having that mentality allows me to be very quick. I'll give you a good example. I had a shoot this week where I had a pretty big director that was going to be at an office. So the setting was not ideal. It was in the cafeteria, which meant that we'd be in a public space. But the good thing is there was high ceilings. So knowing that I had that, I could do a few things. Plus, there was a good amount of space that I could work with. I requested that I could get in an hour before. And by getting in an hour before, that allowed me to put up 3 setups. And I had been told I was given 30 minutes with my subject. And my goal when I'm told that is obviously to do it for less. So the way that I planned out, and I'm a big planner, I've kept a book of my sets since the beginning of my career, and I still do it today. I go in with a plan because my ideology is that even if that plan goes south, I now have a leaping point. I'm not scrambling for a solution. And I have a lot of different lighting styles I do. So I always have, what I call tricks in my bag. But if something's not working, I can move on to the next thing. I'm not stuck. I'm not obviously moving backwards at that point. So with that situation this week, I essentially did it where set number 1 was right in front of me. And then I quickly rotated the lights. Set number 2 is to the right. And then on the other side of the room, I had another light set up and I was able to do my last shot there. And I got everything done in 20 minutes.
Hmm.
And I don't say this to pat myself on the back. I say it because it's an example of how I think when I work, that time is essential to getting it done. I want my subject to be attentive. I want my subject to not be thinking, oh, I'm waiting for these guys to fix their lights. And this all comes from experience, getting yelled at by a professional baseball player because I made him wait.
Oh,
Things
wow.
these things happen. And when you have these, and I love this part is talking about the failures and learning from those failures. I love to fail because failure is where you really learn things.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. Wow. So that happened with you. You got yelled at by a big time baseball player?
I won't say yelled at. I'm not going to name names, but he's on the rival of my favorite team, and I didn't tell him that. But then it all made sense. But essentially, he kind of muttered to another player, "If these effing photographers ever finish, I'll get out of here," kind of thing. And so for me, I just looked him straight in the face and I said, "We're almost done." And that was it. I'm not going to steep down to that level and whatever else is going on in his world. We sweat our butts off that day chasing him around. And, there's a checklist of things he didn't do showing up for that shoot. And I'm sure that's what, going back to the psychology, I'm sure that's what was really floating in his head, was that he knew he didn't show up prepared and we did.
So it sounds like you just have to let it go in those moments, because you still have to get the shot. There's no time to think about this guy's a dick or this guy didn't prepare or whatever. You need to let that go. That doesn't matter. Getting the shot is all that matters. And so it sounds like you were a pro and you said to him what you needed to say, which is, we're almost there. We almost have this shot. We're about to be done. And I love that. I love that you mentioned something that I think is so obvious, but I'm realizing I haven't always been this way. And you prepare. And I have a feeling, please correct me if I'm wrong, that you prepare for many things in your life, not just for your work, but you prepare before and then you give yourself cushion time. You pad your time on either end so that if life happens, you're prepared and you're prepared to pivot and you've got all these tricks in your bag, which to me sounds like experience. And you know that you're able to pivot if that opportunity presents itself. Now, I wonder, do those kind of challenges excite you or do they cause anxiety?
Definitely not anxiety. I think our job as photographers is to have solutions. I lecture on photography quite a bit, and I often mention the idea that these are not problems, they're challenges, and challenges are meant to be overcome. So the way that I view any photo shoot is about challenges and what are the challenges that we're facing. Could be a low ceiling, it could be high tide, it could be the sun not getting out from behind that cloud and we were supposed to shoot it a certain style. All of these things are just challenges. Some we can control, some we can't. And the reality is, what is the solution? Going back to what we were just talking about, and even further back to Harry, one of the main things that Harry said to me all the time, your job is to get the job done. And that is it. And so that, trill Scottish accent's always floating in my head somewhere saying, get the job done. And that's it. And your job is to get that job done. So because that's always back of my mind, those challenges that are almost always going to come up. Something's always going to be there. That's a challenge. Subjects are late. You're late. Traffic, this, that, whatever it is. How are you going to overcome that challenge is really what it comes down to. And there's no room for anxiety in that. There's only room for calm, even keeled. How am I going to deal with this? What's the solution? That's the thought process. So even when I talk about that fear switch not turning on quite often, there's an aspect of tunnel vision that happens for me in photography where I'm so hyper focused on that job, there doesn't leave a lot of room for emotion. And I learned recently that's a bit of a dangerous thing if you try to peek around that corner. But at the end of the day, it really is something that I've developed over time, but I think I was somewhat cut from that cord, be it from sports, be it from this, be it from that. I don't know exactly where it formed, but certainly Harry's influence and then whatever else pieces fell into place that allowed me to think that way.
That's so interesting. The first thing that you said was there's no room for anxiety, which I thought was brilliant. And then you said there's no room for emotion. And that just made me pause. And I want you to elaborate on that because I understand there's no room for anxiety. There's only room for calm or whatever the emotion is that we need in that moment. But what about emotion in general? Why can't there be room for joy and cheer and sass and fun and playfulness and whatever it is, but if it's more considered positive energy?
I mean, perhaps I'm overstating it by saying it that way because there are photo shoots where something fun happens, and of course you're into it, and there's accomplishment. There's excitement. I could probably give you 100 stories of different experiences I've had where there is an emotional response to whatever's going on, even if I'm behind the camera and looking through the lens and solely stuck behind the camera. I guess what I mean about that is more that there's no room for an emotional distraction from what I'm doing. Maybe that's a more precise way to say it. And a great example of that was as we get older, we start thinking about these things, but there's so many experiences that I've had where I don't really realize what the situation is. And so even what you brought up at the beginning, Steven Tyler, obviously that's a very cool moment. And I happen to photograph him twice. So two cool moments, right? And there's stories from both photo shoots that were a lot of fun. And I mean, the first one, he put me in a headlock at the end of the day, which is just weird. But yes, it was just one of those things where I guess I don't always think about that aspect of how cool is this that's happening right now. And again, if you pour through my work, you pour through my portfolio, you'll see there's probably moments of that. And I don't think I really thought about it at the time. And I was thinking about it recently, and then I was given an assignment it was a bit unfortunate. I was trying to work my way into getting a portrait of Bruce Springsteen. I'm a huge fan, and he's probably one of the people that would make me a little nervous. I don't think most celebrities or people of note would make me nervous. I've met plenty that they're just people to me, and that's how I treat it. But he's literally the soundtrack of my life in so many ways. And I wasn't able to get a portrait, but I was given the press pass to go to one of his shows in Los Angeles. And unfortunately, I didn't know this because I'm not a concert photographer, but every venue has different rules. The rules at the venue in LA was that you get to be there for 3 songs. You're with the other approved photographers 500 feet away at the sound booth, and you're on a little riser. You're jammed in next to each other, and that's it. And the third song ends and you are out. And there's no room to really build up to anything. Now, I have been to so many Springsteen shows. I know the lighting. I know his routine. I can anticipate what was going to happen, but I wasn't given the opportunity to shoot it the way I wanted to shoot it. So it was a bit of a bummer in that way, but nonetheless, it was a very cool experience to be able to do that. Now, just before I went to do this assignment, I had this thought about the fact that, I've been to these places, I've been around these people, and I never take a moment to just take my head around the camera and think about, wow, this is cool. So at one, even though it was very quick, and I think it was about 12 or 14 minutes of those 3 songs, at one moment, I took my head away from the viewfinder and a little wave of emotion hit me. And I was like, oh, not doing that again. I just went,
Oh,
yeah, it was too much for me. I just, I wasn't mentally able to handle it, I guess.
I really want to challenge you with this because whenever I see emotion come out of you, because I know you to be such a pro, and when I say pro, somebody whose ultimate objective is to get the shot. But when I see emotion come out of you, I honestly think that's the most beautiful part of you shining through. I'm wondering if there's a way for you to peek your head to the side of the camera, just go away from the viewfinder for just a moment, really savor that, take that in, allow it. Don't say, you got to get back. You got to get back. You only have limited time. Savor it for as long as you need to. Then go back to the camera and get that shot with that emotion in you. Is that possible?
I don't know. I mean, I think that experience opened up the idea of whether that is something that's possible. I could certainly say I didn't like it in that moment.
What part didn't you like?
Just because, again, that connection I have with his music and what it means to me for my life, I found it to be distracting from the purpose for me being there. And again, being so assignment driven, even when I'm doing personal shoots, that's a personal assignment. So I have a job to get done, and distractions from that are something that doesn't work with the way that I'm sort of built. So to some degree, I think I am, for whatever reason at this age, starting to think about those things and maybe take those things in. But there's a bit of regret that comes with that as well, because at the time, so many of those situations had taken place that I maybe didn't step back and realize what was going on. Those opportunities are not as frequent anymore. Yes, I still get some pretty cool assignments, but there was obviously in a much better economy and all the other factors that took into play, working with creative directors that really wanted to push my boundaries and put me in situations that would challenge me and all that. I don't have the frequency of that stuff as much anymore. And at the same time, a celebrity shoot is a celebrity shoot is a celebrity shoot. So yes, there are different venues, different situations, different challenges, but in each of those things, I'm still repeating the same thing. So it's not new, like the way it was, 15 years ago.
Right. So many questions just came up. The first one about Bruce is you didn't end up getting the shot that you wanted that night, right? When
I mean, I got the job done as
Okay,
best as I can. I can certainly hang my hat and say that I got the images that I needed to get for the assignment. But what I wanted to do, I mean, truthfully, I wanted to do a portrait of him, and it had nothing to do with shooting him on stage. But the way that I would shoot a concert, and I did music stuff over the years. I mean, way back in New York, I mean, I was given assignments to go to CBGBs and places like that. There, I would be the only photographer, and I'd be right up against the stage, and I'd be working with the talent before the set took place, and sometimes backstage and things like that. Those things were what I would have liked to have done. I would have liked to have been right up against the stage or even on the stage, hiding in the shadows and getting images that capture what Bruce is and who he is and all that, to tell the story 500 feet away, getting essentially the same shot as other people, slightly different composition, maybe, different camera settings, different color temperature, whatever each individual does is slightly different, but it's the reason I don't shoot around other photographers. I don't like another photographer's lens behind me for that very reason. I'm okay with sharing how I do what I do, but I don't want to be shooting with you at the same time.
That makes perfect sense to me. And I'm envisioning you taking Bruce Springsteen's portrait. You've already had the opportunity to shoot him twice. Maybe not in the way that you would prefer, but you did get that opportunity nonetheless. I believe, because you've shared that here and with our audience, that you will most likely manifest a third shoot if you want.
Well,
And it
sorry,
would
only one time I got it, and
one,
that was just one concert. Yeah, it was Tyler,
Steve,
actually.
you're right. You're right.
But sorry to correct you, but yeah, I mean, it might. Uh, I now, of course, know the people to contact because I was given their email addresses as part of that assignment. But I think certainly at this point, I mean, he's got his biopic coming out. He's got, all these things happening. It's a bit of a stretch to think that it would be so easy. But yes, I love the idea that you put that stuff out in the ether and it just happens because for that reason. But at the same time, if it never does, that's okay too. I mean, I had really wanted to do a portrait of Arnold Schwarzenegger, particularly for a cigar book that I was working on. And we put it out there. We put the request. We got all the way as close as we could get. And it was a no. But,
Mm.
that's all right too. I mean, you're not going to get them all. That's just the reality of this business.
The way that I look at it, it was a no then. It was a no then. Who knows what it would be today or any day in the future. If it's something
Absolutely.
that you really, really want, I would continue to share it out loud in the universe with people like me and with the audience so that it eventually gets there. It's like it's reaching the people you need it to reach.
Absolutely. I mean, dumb or not, I still send to my regular clients who assign me celebrity work, my dream list, wish list. I put it out there. I know they don't even ask for it. I'm just doing it because I want to plant that seed that, an assignment comes up and maybe they say, oh, you know what? Ian once said that he wanted to shoot Jeremy Allen White. Like these things might happen. You just never know. And so I don't mind putting it out there like that for that very reason. I'm not sort of on the path of saying, things in the ether happen or don't happen, but I don't mind putting it out there. I think I'd rather put that out there just the same as I don't want to sit around talking negative talk about the state of the industry and all that stuff because there's no point. It's not going to get you anywhere. Throwing that positive stuff out there certainly is something that maybe it will manifest something. I'm not going to put all my eggs in that basket of believing that, but who knows? I'd rather do that than bitch and moan about stuff.
I think whether you're aware of it or not, you have manifested so much success in your life. And I know you're one of those people that want more. It's, you know, you're never satisfied, if you will. I think that that has attributed to your success greatly. There are a lot of young aspiring photographers out there. There are seasoned photographers out there who look to you, who are inspired by you. And I think one of the ingredients that you have is you're choosing to put things out there because otherwise nobody's going to know about what it is that you want. If you don't share that information, it has no possibility of coming to fruition. And the same thing is true about not dwelling on the negative aspects that do exist and that we are all aware of. That doesn't serve us in any kind of way. In fact, it just kind of perpetuates that negativity. I'm wondering, are these things that you learned early on in your life? Did you learn them from Harry? Or where did you learn these concepts?
I think sports is one area that definitely came through. I was a pretty big soccer player. That's what I wanted to do in college. And, I had learned in that capacity that imagining the ball going into the net, I was a striker, so I was a goal scorer. And so that picturing in your mind of the ball in the net and even hyper focusing to the point of the way that it's spinning and hitting the net and all of that was something that I definitely was big on, that visualization of being a part of the success in sport. And I almost wish I understood that better. I think I would have been a better athlete in other areas at, that high school level and college level. If I understood that more, I think I was just scratching the surface at that time. And then the other area that I would say that that comes from to some degree is really just the mindset of picturing what you want and using that as even far off in the distance goal, and whether that's in sport or life or whatever the case is, but essentially imagining what it could be and then using that as a what do they call that, a light in the distance or
Yeah.
what have you.
Yeah. Do you have a light in the distance right now that you can share with us?
I mean, Harry's influence is an idea of longevity, and longevity to me is the goal of my career. That if I can continue to do what I do and be hired and acknowledged for what I do, then that's a success in itself. Even if I don't ever reach that full degree of where I think I could be. We've talked about it, I think, a little bit about the aspect of being at the mercy of opportunities. And I think it's the struggle that we all face, in a sense that we can do all the right things, but may not get the opportunity. And so putting myself in a position to be prepared for that opportunity is really where most of the attention is focused at this point. I know I could shoot any assignment that's given to me. I know I can handle any assignment that's given to me. It's more now about getting those opportunities.
I have a board in my kitchen that says opportunities are here. And it used to say opportunities are on the way or they're coming. And I changed it recently to opportunities are here. And it's kind of incredible what has come out of that. Me switching that language is I'm realizing, and opportunities also look very different for each individual. I have to think of more things as opportunities in my mind, even if they're challenging or even if they don't look like what I initially wanted them to look like. So when you were sharing that, that just made me think of that opportunities are here message that I have. You've referenced your teacher, Harry, so much. How did you even meet him? How did you get that opportunity?
Exactly. It was interesting. When I was in college, I was fortunate to do an internship at GQ magazine. And that summer, Harry walked in, and Harry's a very recognizable person. He's got very white hair. He typically is wearing a seersucker suit, especially in the summertime, with a green handkerchief in his pocket. And his Scottish accent obviously stands out. I am 1/4 Scottish, and I don't know if it's because my name is Ian or I don't know what, but he took a liking to me when I met him. And I knew exactly who he was when he walked in the office. The photo director walked right past my desk, and I was like, oh my God, that's Harry Benson. And I knew his work from college. And so when I got the opportunity, sorry to use the word, to meet him in the office, for whatever reason, he took a liking to me. And then that summer, every assignment that he did, we used to, back in that period of time, it was pre-digital, we would have messengers go and pick up the film from photographers or from the labs. And part of my job as the assistant in the photo department was to run those messenger slips up to the messenger department and get that done. He decided that he wouldn't send his pictures by messenger, and he would force me to come and pick them up. This job's too important. You're going to come pick it up, that kind of stuff. So I got it. It was kind of funny, but he would then take me to lunch, and that's when I would hear these stories, and he would impart so much knowledge on me in those opportunities. And basically it was, the period of time where we formed a bit of a friendship. And then as time went on, and I don't know if you even knew this, but I was a photo editor at magazines for about 13 years. So essentially I would assign the photography and produce and direct the photo shoots that happened for magazines back, this is at a period of time when magazines, I won't say mattered because that's kind of a little strong at this point, but they were a lot more prevalent, and
Right.
the magazine stand was where we went for information. And everybody loved magazines at this period of time. This is the late 90s, early 2000s. And so now I was in a much bigger position by this point, and I was assigning this legendary photographer to work for me. And so the dynamic changed a little bit, but our friendship had formed at that point. And I mean, I'd visit him, he spent some time in Florida. So if I was down there, I'd go visit him at his house in Florida. And, I've played golf with him. And, there was definitely something beyond just a work relationship at that period of time. I talk often about the idea that he's almost like a third grandfather. And, the most recent time I saw him, he was out doing a retrospective, just happened to be at the Museum of Ventura, which is not far from where I live. I got to see him there, and he met my kids, which was really cool because they're, teenagers at that point. And my older son, in particularly, is into history. I was like, you're about to meet a person that has witnessed history for a very long time. So I know he really appreciated it as well.
That is such a touching story. I love it. He was not only your teacher and your mentor, but he was also your friend and, in a way, your third grandfather. What a blessing. What a cool guy to be your mentor and for him to eventually meet your children. That's pretty incredible. I know that some of the people watching today will be like, well, gosh, I want to manifest an opportunity like that as well, because I know I just need some mentorship. And we're never going to know what it was that day that made him want you to be around him. You said you didn't know what it was, but I wondered if there's a possibility of him seeing a little bit of himself through you, like maybe a younger version. I don't know. I have no idea.
Ask him that.
Right. I'm curious. Let's bring it back to where we are today and all the work you've accomplished. What is your next goal with photography and your career?
I think at this point, this is the struggle. I mean, this is where seeing the next level that I'd really like to be at is this glass ceiling aspect. And I have definitely have remarked to other people that I've put my foot in that water, not just a toe, but I've put my foot in that water many times, but both feet have not gotten in there yet. And that's both a frustration and an inspiration for me because I know I can be there. I know I'm capable of being there. So now it's just this missing piece of the puzzle, and trying to figure that out is the struggle part, I think. So for me, it's knowing that I still have something to say. And this year being the way it's been for a lot of people, and, the entertainment industry being pretty horrible in California, has definitely sidelined a lot of the opportunities that were in motion in prior years, even after the pandemic. There was a lot of things happening, and I was getting work that definitely was putting me on that path to where I want to be. But we face these side roads all the time in the industry, and there's ups and there's downs, and you just never know what it's going to be year by year. And the state of it right now isn't, it's not great for anybody. And I've recognized that, I'm still here and I'm still trying to figure out what's going to put me at that next level. And I don't know. I just don't know. But I'm not done. I know that.
I know you're not done. And you're so good at pivoting. You're so good at going to where you need to go when you feel like you're stopped in the direction you were going. So I'm wondering if this is an invitation from life, not just the industry, not just the entertainment industry, but an invitation from life for you to get curious about a path that you haven't even considered yet. I wonder if we can get closer to that through this conversation. I want to know what kind of shoots fill your soul. Do you even know?
I mean, I often say that I love to shoot, and that's sometimes a dangerous thing because just the aspect of having a camera in my hand and making images, that's enough for me. I don't necessarily need it to be a celebrity. I don't necessarily need it to be cigars. I don't necessarily need it to be a swimsuit model. It's all encompassed in the same thing, which is just being able to make photographs and create photographs. And certainly I've asked myself that, particularly in a down year, what does this look like? I remember when I was photo editing, and to me, photography was not what I wanted to do. And it was something I just did on the side. And at that time, I was teaching myself how to use large format photography cameras. And I would just go, and wherever I was, I would take that camera and I would make images of landscapes or this or that, or just whatever I saw. There was a summer in New York where I would go all over the city with a little twin lens camera and shoot street portraits with people not even being aware that I was taking their portraits, because those twin lens cameras were the kind you look down in, so they couldn't even see what I was doing. And just sort of sneakily making portraits of people and things and scenes that I was seeing in my head, just sort of putting that stuff out there. This is the way that I see the world. And I don't know if I'd return to that. I sort of envision that if I got to a point where I actually retired, which I can't imagine that anyway, but if I ever got to that place, Would I go back to that kind of photography? Would I always be making pictures? And there's a piece of me that thinks I would, for that very reason. And now with our project that we talked about, where I pushed you outside your comfort zone first, that was me also pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. I was using a camera with a wide lens to make portraits, which is not the definition of how you do it. And with a fixed lens, wide lens, you force yourself to see differently and think differently. It goes along that line of never being satisfied. It's almost too easy to me now with the digital cameras and the zoom lenses that are so good that allow me to get the job done. So now I'm going to make myself uncomfortable to get it done if I only have this piece of equipment in my hand, you know?
Oh, I love that you challenged yourself in that way.
All the time. That's what personal projects are for.
Yes. That's amazing. I mean, exactly. And that's why I reached out to you about this one in particular, because I trust you and I know that no matter what, we were going to get a great image. And I think that we exceeded those expectations. I think that you brought up something really interesting, the idea of like retiring and then what would you do? So I'm wondering if like money was no object at all. The kids' schooling was all paid for, all their bills were paid for, the house is covered, everybody's taken care of, and then some. What would you do?
I would definitely play a lot more golf. That's for sure. And yeah, I have had those thoughts because I wonder what it would be like. And there is a piece of me that golf is definitely a piece of that. I'm not kidding about that part, but
I didn't know you loved golf that much.
oh yeah, it's definitely, if I had more time and money, I would play quite a bit more. I'm sure of that. But I do think that you don't stop making images if you're somebody that sees the world in a certain way and wants to capture it, share it, whatever words you want to put to it. I think you just do it. I can certainly say during that period of time when I was photo editing, director of photography at a magazine, I was shooting on the side because I had some innate need to do that. And it wasn't for anybody but myself. So even if nobody saw that, it's things we learn. If you've never seen the documentary on a photographer called Vivian Meyer, it's worth watching for anybody, photography fans or not. She was a bit of a recluse and she was a nanny, I think in Chicago. And she was one of the great photographers that we've ever produced in the United States. And nobody knew who she was until this guy found her undeveloped film at a flea market or a tag sale or something. Do you know about this story?
Yes, now it's coming to me.
It's a great documentary. And her images were for her, nobody else. And she didn't live to be celebrated, but it just goes to show you that old school photographers, which I would consider myself a bit of an old school photographer, that there's a need to do it and we don't necessarily understand it or need to understand it. It's just something we do.
I love that. So we're already uncovering how much you love photography, regardless of what the job requires. It's something you want to do just for you. I'm wondering what you did before you were a photographer.
Well, I've had a camera since I was 6, so it's a little
Are
hard
you
to,
serious? You got a
yeah.
camera when you were 6?
Yeah, I mean, it was a crappy little, you're probably too young to even know it, but the disc camera, do you remember what a disc camera was?
No.
Okay, so they had this, it was essentially a point and shoot camera, but it had whatever the film was. I actually never even bothered to look, but it was on a disc. And so the film was actually on a round piece, I guess, of equipment. So it was a little weird little camera, but I very much recall 6 to 10 probably playing around with that. And then I think I got a hold of, I feel like it was one of my grandfather's old cameras, and that was a 35. And very much remember working with that for a long time. And then high school, we had darkroom experience. And then going into college, I had no intention of being a photographer. I went to school essentially to play soccer and study sports medicine. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a trainer for a pro sports team. That was my ambition. And I wanted to play soccer for 4 years. And I ended up only playing soccer for 1. And about a year and change into volunteering in the training room, grades, well, first semester, my grades were pretty shit because I was spending all the time either in class or at soccer. And if not there, then I was in the training room, and grades definitely suffered. I think most freshmen gained 20 pounds or 40 pounds or something. I lost 40, which was crazy. Yeah, it was
From
nuts.
how
And
active you were in soccer?
because I I knew nothing about nutrition at the time, but I don't think many people did. But I missed every meal the way my class schedule was, and soccer practice was like 4 hours. And I didn't understand training at that point. Everything I did to get ready to play in college, which was gaining weight and getting bigger and all that went to hell in a handbasket very quickly. And the second trimester, I literally took a drawing class because I knew I could get an A in it. And then spring trimester photography came around and I was like, oh, I have a camera. I can do this and I probably get an A in it. And that sort of started to shift the path. And then I did an internship that summer for a photographer's rep, and I got exposed to a ton of photography. I really liked it. Continued with photography the next year. And then by that next summer was when I did that internship at GQ. And then at that point, I still said, I don't want to be a photographer. I like working in a photo department and assigning the photography. I felt that I was better at looking at photography than doing it myself. And I could always keep it on the side as a hobby. And that's the way that I thought for a long time. 3 weeks into my full-time job after graduation, which was back at GQ magazine, something needed to be photographed last minute. We didn't have time to assign it, and I volunteered to do it. And that started my still life career for 6.5 years. That's how I started doing still life.
Wow, that's so incredible. I didn't know any of that. I didn't know how much you love golf and how great you were at soccer and that you wanted to be a sports trainer. I didn't know any of that. And it sounds like the universe has always put literally a camera in your hands and you kept it to a certain extent, but you didn't really embrace it until much later.
Yeah. The crazy thing is that my best friend, who's still my best friend since we were probably 3 or so, used to say in high school, we're talking sophomore year of high school, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a trainer for a pro sports team. That, like, I had it in mind already. And he always said to me through high school, nah, man, you're an artist. You're going to be an artist. He used to say it to me all the time. And we still laugh about it today that he used to say that back then.
Because he saw it when you didn't. That is so interesting. That's so interesting. What else are you not seeing that the universe is trying to tell you?
I don't know.
Oh man, so many questions. I'm still processing everything about how you got to where you are. What is the question that young aspiring photographers ask you the most?
Probably what's your best advice to having a career, to being a photographer, all that stuff. And the answer is so simple. It's shoot, shoot, shoot. That is really it. You just need that 10,000 hours plus then, what is that Malcolm Gladwell
Yeah,
saying?
outliers.
Forget the 10,000 hours, talk about 100,000 hours, 200,000 hours. Like that's really where it happens. As I mentioned earlier, those failures, they teach you something every single time. Those experiences put you in a position where you maybe plan to have lights way, way high up above and the ceiling stopped you. And so now you have a plan for how to deal with that when you walk into the next situation where the ceilings aren't as high as you were told they would be. Things like that, they pay each and every time. So the only way to really get there is to continue to shoot. And the answers will just fall into place from there.
I totally agree with that because not only for photography, but like anything you're trying to get good at, you just need to practice, practice, practice. And failing is such an essential part of that process. I don't even view failing as a bad thing anymore. I view it as something essential and a good thing. In fact,
Absolutely.
when I'm coaching my little girls and they quote unquote fail, I say, good, good. Now we're getting one step closer to succeeding. I'm starting to get an even more complete picture of you. I see the sports trainer for like a high level team, which means you not only need to have knowledge, but you also played soccer. And so you were athletic from a young age. You admitted that you didn't really know that much about nutrition back in the day, but that means that you do now. I'm wondering how health and fitness in general plays a role in your life, and does it affect your career in any way?
Absolutely. I mean, first thing we're judged on is what we look like, right? I mean, that's the that's the fortunate aspect of our eyes, right? So I think that, absolutely it's integral to my life. I mean, that's the best therapy in my opinion is physical activity. I mean, I train probably too much at this point, even though I know better, but I still can't stop myself. But it's just what I love to do. And that understanding of what a role food plays in that certainly, it drives me a little crazy because I wish I knew this stuff back in high school, but I don't think anybody knew this stuff when I was in high school. And, I wrestled as well and essentially destroyed myself, physically from wrestling in terms of not eating and, jumping rope in the showers with garbage bags on our bodies and things that they don't allow anymore. But back then it wasn't an issue. And I now know I could have eaten to lose weight. And I now know that during that period of soccer, I should have been eating a lot more for the amount of calories I was burning. And as well, I should have still continued to weight train during the entire season. Whereas I would do sit-ups and push-ups, and people even thought that was weird that I would do push-ups after practice. And, I caught some nicknames as a result of that. But it's one of those funny things where I really should have been in the training room. And I watch my younger son now, and he has picked up on all this and he loves it and he loves the nutrition stuff. And he will go and he plays on the golf team, and he'll go to the driving range and then he'll work out. And he understands that the two things don't have to be separate. They can be in conjunction with each other to be better. And I just find it annoying that I didn't know it then, but I'm glad I know what I know now, because it's allowed me physically to stay where I want to be and be, probably better than I was 10 years ago, I would say.
Yeah, since I've known you, you've been a very super fit guy, super fit. And every single time we get together, we always talk about nutrition. It's not planned, it just happens. And I love it because I could talk about it all day. And I know how important it is in my life. And it has contributed to my success, I believe. For you, and the only reason why I'm questioning you about this is because you are super fit, you are super strong, and I've been there myself, is you alluded to the possibility of overtraining. Why do you think you overtrain?
Because I know that rest days are integral to really seeing the benefits of training. And I'm really bad about rest days and mobility. I've gotten better about mobility, but even with that, I still probably don't do enough of it. And I've had a ton of injuries. I mean, obviously I played sports growing up, and I was definitely known as a bit of a bruiser when I played soccer, not being the tallest guy and not being the biggest guy, especially back then. But those injuries come back to haunt you later in life for sure. And even if you are physically fit, injuries just are endless. It's certainly as we get older, there's always something sort of, oh, I tweaked this, I tweaked that. And I try to understand that stuff as best as possible. I try to train around that stuff so that I can avoid injury as best as I can. Sometimes things just happen you can't even control. Wear and tear on your body is definitely wear and tear on your body. And I've certainly put myself in enough positions to be a good candidate for arthritis and all that other stuff. And again, nutrition being a big piece of staying healthy in that way. But for certain, I know that 2 rest days would be a lot better for me. I struggle with getting one, I'll put it that way.
Wow. I
And
I
usually
re-
one, that's a day I'm playing golf.
Oh, your rest day is an active rest day.
Yeah.
And
Like I said,
I
I
don't
figured
have
it.
to ask you. I bet you're walking the course.
Of course. Yeah.
Of course you are. So you're getting in all the steps. And it's not like on a rest day you have to be lying on the couch. But you're right. With as muscular as you are and as fit as you are, 2 rest days, maybe even 3. Do I dare say 3 to you? I don't think this is a physical thing. It sounds like it's a mental thing.
100%.
Okay. Does your body not deserve 2 rest days a week?
I'll put it to you this way. Every time I've pushed myself to take more, or sometimes I'm traveling and things are impossible. You can't necessarily train on the road sometimes. There's all those aspects of life gets in the way. Even if I've had injuries, I've always managed to find a way. But I can definitely say that for me, I feel worse when I don't train. And
In
even
what
if
way?
I mean, typically my weight will go up, which I don't like. Other times it'll just, my back will get tight. Physical ailments that maybe I keep at bay start to surface. I understand that there's an aspect of the brain and pain mixing together. And I've definitely looked into this a lot. I overcame some back and neck issues from reading a book by Dr. John Sarno that talked about The Mind Body Prescription, great book if you've never read it, but essentially that talks about the idea that the pain is real, but it's not what you think it is. And you can overcome that pain through your brain more than you can through medical interaction. And so I'll look for those solutions always first, regardless. But I just feel better when I'm moving and I feel better when I'm doing something active. And there's times where maybe I've got, a project in the yard and that will be my exercise for the day. And it might be some hard physical labor and that'll be enough. But the least it's like, a day off means you're going to go for a 4 mile walk or something like that. Not just, like you said, sit on the couch.
Yeah, a 4-mile walk, in my opinion, is okay as long as we're not trying to speed along and we're just the only goal is just to have movement. I think it's okay to move. In fact, I encourage everyone to move every single day. And I haven't actually watched you on a proper workout day. I should get clear before I start prescribing recovery days. But I'm imagining you're lifting weights.
I'm pretty good at understanding the mix of exercise. So the formula that's kind of working for me right now, and I change it all the time, and I have probably 100 different workouts in my phone if you pour through them. But the one sort of technique that I'm going with now, which seems to be working, is this mix of 3 HIIT days, which is high intensity training, and a little bit of static resistance training within that, and then straight resistance days. And I will do deload weeks where I'll just go very lightweight through the same motions, but with everything, but just much, much lighter weight. I don't push as much weight as I have in the past because I just know I don't need to. I don't try to max out and I don't try to ego lift or anything like that. I'm not interested in any of that. It's really just maintaining where I'm at is really what I'm aiming for. And then I mix in heavy cardio in the sense of pickleball, which I'm addicted to as well. But some days I might just do that. That might be the only thing I do is that. And that's, 1 to 2.5, 3 hours sometimes at most of playing. And that's comes with rests in between matches and things like that. But I try to vary the training as much as possible, not only to allow my body to have recovery within itself, but also to shock new growth of muscle and all that. But at the end of the day, I completely understand that it's all in the kitchen. And so that's where the nutrition stuff comes into play. And I understand most of it. I think I'm capable of understanding. And there's always those questions like, why isn't this working? Why isn't that? Or why did this change? Why did that change? But I think at this point, I've gathered enough knowledge to get the idea of it, enough to coach my son in the sense that I can say to him, okay, you want to put muscle on, this is what you need to do. You want to drop some body fat, this is what you need to do. And it's different for everybody, but these are the general rules and you can see what tweaks work for you and then always be loose enough to understand that what might work for me is not going to work for you. So let's try a couple different things and see how it goes.
I love that because as a coach, I have to apply that to every individual client that I see because they're all different and their bodies react different and where they're at in life is different and what kind of challenges they face, whether they have kids or a dog, a cat, a partner. Sometimes they're single, sometimes they have a high demanding job, and sometimes they have all the time in the world. And you have to meet people where they're at, I believe.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to get curious about you saying that when you're not active, like the pain starts to rise a little bit more. And I'm just wondering if that's due to inactivity and you just being so still that, the body is not staying supple, or is that like those rare moments of silence where you can actually hear what your body's trying to tell you?
I mean, I've certainly asked the question, right? There are times where maybe I'm on a huge deadline and I'm retouching, 15 images and I got to get it done in that day. And so I might be stuck at the computer for 8 hours. And obviously, as we all know, sitting is really bad. And other times I might be on the road and I might be driving for 5 hours or sitting in a plane and then driving 3 hours, things like that. These things do happen. And certainly in those situations, I try to do something before that starts so that I at least got something in so that I'm not just doing that 8 hours like that. But I don't know. I mean, there's a part of me that believes that those aches and pains surface perhaps some percentage of it must be mental, knowing that I'm accustomed to a lot of activity. And then I think another part of it is just the wear and tear that I've done over the years, and what I've done, that physically maybe wasn't great for my body, that has manifested itself when it's not active enough. So even if it is that day where I'm just going for, a couple hours walk or an hour walk or something, that at least there's movement, I feel better in those situations. And so I know there's lymphatic and there's all these other things. And, I'm not aware enough scientifically to talk about that, but I certainly know that those are important. So I think it's just that balance. And I definitely would say my scales tip towards too much training, but I do understand the balance aspect of it.
Yeah. And, my scale tips towards overtraining as well. That's the only reason why I'm questioning you, is because I completely understand.
You see it in yourself. Yeah.
I do. And it's been much worse for sure. I'm much more aware of it now. I've overtrained.
You do it and you do it anyway.
No, I've overtrained way heavier. About 10 to 5 years ago, there was a period in my life where I didn't realize I was doing it because I had nothing to compare it to. But now that I'm older, one of my pet peeves is I don't like it when people say, and when they're in their 40s or 50s and they say, "Oh my gosh, I'm old." And I'm like, "Shut up." Because I think you're as old as you tell yourself you are. If you take really good care of your body and you have this childlike mentality where you like to be surprised by the world, you have a sense of wonder and awe, and you believe in, a little bit of magic, I think that that can keep you very young. If you decide that you're old, then you're old. For me, grappling with that concept has been a challenge because as I get older, things do shock my body a lot more, and it takes me a lot longer to recover. But I also realized that when I was overtraining, I was doing myself a disservice because I was breaking down muscle that was already broken down. And I wasn't feeding it enough protein, even though I calculated my macros to a T and I made sure I was getting in that 100 to 120 grams of protein every single day based on my body weight at that time, blah, blah, blah. Like, I can be very, very precise. And I think that that has helped me in a lot of ways. But in other ways, it has hurt me. And it's all okay because where I'm at today is of a much more flexible mindset. So that's the only reason why I bring up the questions around overtraining, because I know how hyper disciplined you are. I know how you persevere. You will not quit. I think that you are thirsty for knowledge and you're a lifelong learner. And so I just challenge you yet again to just look at that.
Yeah, I'm definitely of the idea that there's always more to learn about this piece of it. And especially as we are getting into those older brackets where your body is wanting to slow down for physiological reasons, right? But I challenge that itself because I love it when people think I'm in my 30s and I'm like, hell yeah, and
Will
I'm
you
not even
share
close.
how old you are?
Sure, I'm 51,
That's
and people think,
amazing.
thank you. And I do get accused more lately. It's like 38, 39. It used to be 32, and I love that. But lately it's been 38. And I'm like, all right, I'll take it still. But even if somebody thinks I'm in my young 40s, I'm fine with that because I don't move like I'm an old guy, in any way. And I certainly challenge again my younger son who's very physically fit and active. And I like the idea that I still have more abs than he has. We talk about it all the time. I think we talked about this a long time ago that my gym is in my garage. And so my kids see me working out. I don't ever tell them to go work out. I wanted just to show that example to them that you can be, my son jokes that I was born in the 40s and he thinks I'm ancient. So I'd rather he think, well, my dad's in great shape, and give him that aspiration in his life and understanding that it only makes for a better life if you have physical activity in your life and you're aware of what you put into your body and you're thinking about these things, allowing him to still be a kid too. And he's about to go to college. So like he's going to have a certain life in college. But even with that, I talked to him about it's all good and fun and all that thing, but just be aware of what you're putting in and what you're putting out.
And you've shown him that by example, by being who you are. And it's been a gift that you've been able to give to your son, possibly to both of them. I don't know if the other one saw it as well.
He's not as physically active, but I know he knows what I do and who I am. So there is that aspect. He's a different kid. They're two very, very different kids. And so as we talk about all these challenges, that's part of it too, is understanding that they are two very individual kids and treating them as such.
I love that. I think that some of the folks today who are going to be listening are going to be models, they're going to be actors, and I want to ask you, as someone who is behind the camera, what would you ask of us? What would you like more of? What are you sometimes seeing on set that's not happening? How can we make your job easier?
I never thought of it that way. It's my job to get that job done that we talked about. So certainly I've had those situations where my subject is, I wouldn't say not cooperative, but more so not capable, or, I shoot a lot of real people, and real people sometimes don't know what to do with their hands. We always joke around the lobster claws, that happened. And that story I told earlier of the director I was shooting, we joked about that in the 2-second interaction that we had before I started shooting, what to do with his hands. And, I don't know. I've never really looked at my subject as that's something I need to tell them how to do it, other than how I am telling them how to do it. So just in the same way that I remember when we did the shoot in that field, and I said to you, go stand here and I want you to play to the light here. Eventually you understood it. And sometimes I will show somebody and say, when you see the light this way and you feel it, I think we've talked about this quite often, where I'll say, just feel it on your left eye just a little bit. And now you just have this piece of information that you can now take forward to the next photo shoot or commercial, where if you understand where the light is, then you know how to look your best, because that light's always going to make you look better than when you're facing the other way. Maybe, if anything, now that I'm thinking about it, it's telling my subjects to take that information and use it going forward. Because if you're an actor or a model or the subject of a photo shoot and you understand where the light is, that'll answer everything for you. All photography exists with light. That's it. There's no photography without it. So if you understand light, and this is what I preach to photographers, understanding light is the key to being a good photographer.
I love that advice because I have never heard a photographer say it so eloquently before. I have received coaching on set before, like, if you don't feel the light on your face, turn so that you do. And the way that you said it, though, I feel like it's so much more palatable. I think that you're asking versus telling. And there's a big difference between doing it that way and telling someone. And what I'm hearing is that you're asking your subjects, whether they're a seasoned actor or model, or they're just a real person that needs to be shot for something, you're asking them to be coachable, be open, and be coachable. And if you are, you're going to learn something. Take that newfound knowledge and apply it moving forward, should you be in another photo shoot. I love that. I haven't heard it that way before. There's going to be a lot of different people listening to this. I think a lot of people in our industry, in entertainment, actors, models, real people, photographers, cinematographers, people who are just interested in this stuff in general, or maybe aspiring to either get into your world or my world. What is something you want to leave with them about yourself that they would never know? What's something about yourself that you want to share?
I don't know if there's anything that I would constitute as the thing that I want people to know about me per se. I don't really do this for the name and lights. I've never been that guy. I like the recognition more than the name and lights than anything else. And when I was a director of photography, I used to say this all the time, that I always had a boss above me for a long time that would love the ego stroke. They just wanted to take credit. And a lot of the jobs that I had in magazines, things would be amazing for 6 to 9 months. And I would just be doing my job and nobody would get in my way. And I certainly had a little bit of an attitude about it because I knew I was young and I was higher up in the department than most people my age at the time. And I don't want to use the full word arrogance, but I definitely would say at that time I had a little piece of arrogance about it, that I knew I was good at what I did. Even with that, though, it was this weird combination of wanting to sort of be in the shadow and not be the guy with the camera calling the shots, but being the guy behind the guy so that I'd be directing it and whatever. And then at the same time, having a little arrogance that I'm good at what I do. So, recognize, right? And then at the same time, not necessarily caring that my name was on the marquee. I didn't want that. I still don't necessarily want that. But what I told one of my bosses once was I was actually trying, I was 25 and I was trying to be the director of photography at the magazine. And they were definitely not looking at me seriously enough because they said I was too young. And I got this a lot at the beginning of my career. And I looked very young too, which didn't help. And I intentionally wouldn't meet with people outside that often because I didn't want them to see how young I was. Because on the phone, they always assumed I was much older. And I remember telling my boss that I wanted the top job. And he pretty much was at that time of period in our careers. Ageism wasn't a known term in that way. And he was pretty much like, you're a kid. What are you talking about? And I was like, well, listen, at the end of the day, I don't care if my name is at the top of the masthead, but when I walk past you in the hallway, just punch me in the shoulder. Let me know that I'm doing the job. And that to this day is still the same way. I don't need to be the celebrity photographer with the big ego in the room competing with the celebrity who's on set. I just want them to recognize that I'm good at what I do and I get the job done and that's it.
I don't know why I'm getting emotional right now, but I love everything about that. I didn't even think of that question up until that point, and I just love that answer so much. That is so you. I can attest to that is authentic Ian. And you're not only a good photographer, but you are a fucking amazing photographer. And I feel absolutely blessed that I've been able to shoot with you as much as I have and learn from you and feel lucky enough to call you my friend.
Oh, thank you.
Ian, thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy day to be with us here. I can't thank you enough. I'm so excited to see where you go with your career. I feel like today was a great example of you possibly manifesting something wonderful and unexpected. We will see.
Yeah, we'll see. Thank you. I really appreciate your time.